With this film, Malayalam cinema yet again takes a big leap in the horror genre. And me, who's not a big fan of the genre, I survived this film in a theatre. And I'm very happy that I accomplished this. But I'm not sure that is the film not that horror-y, or have I grown up? Let's break it all down. Hello guys, I'm Nona and today talking about the latest Malayalam horror film, Diés Irae, written and directed by Rahul Sadasivan, who has previously made films like Bhutakalam and Ramayukam, which I've reviewed. And because of that, there was a lot of hype behind this film. Another horror, a genre that is very deprived in Indian cinema. Now we need to talk about the theatre experience because I think horror films are meant to be watched in a dark room on the big screen with that great sound system, so you can totally enjoy it. And I think this film delivers on all that fronts, but it's the audience that doesn't deliver. Now my show was quite packed, around 60 to 70% occupancy, which is quite good, and that actually reassured me that I'll have a better experience than watching the film with less people or no people alone. That would have been a big nightmare. The truth is we seriously lack cinema tickets, and that's why I'm not a big fan watching a film in a packed theater. Like literally I think 15 times people's phone rang and no one was like, oh, someone's phone rang, I'll make my phone on mute. No one even thinks of it. In the middle of the film, someone will put out their phone with a flashlight on, take a picture and send it on WhatsApp. Someone is scrolling Instagram, and because they're in front of you, that light pops up and your attention gets diverted. These are just small things, but overall the audience was better. I think only at one place there was a jump scare and someone actually screamed out loud, which made everyone laugh. Apart from that, it was fine, and none of these things actually came in the way of the film, but it was not a perfect experience as you would ideally want. But this Malayalam film rises above all of this with its technical prowess. Like, it's just brilliantly executed film. From the visuals in the trailer itself, you could tell how good the framing and the composition is. Like, there's thought put behind everything that comes on screen. The way all the elements on the screen are arranged, there's an aesthetical value to it. And horror is a genre which has to be very experiential, so you need to use the camera, the edit, the sound very well, and this film nails it. They use a lot of tricks like keeping the camera very close to the characters, and when they have to give a big reveal, we cut to a wide shot. That's it. And even when there's nothing horrifying in it, it still gives you a sudden scare. It's also very well used in building up to the moment of the reveal. We have to talk about the house in the film, which is a character in itself. First of all, I need to know, did they build this house? I think not. They found a really good property and then used it. Maybe interiors they designed, or maybe the interiors were just like that and they designed the screenplay of the film according to the house. These are some random questions I'd love to know the answers to, because there is an architecture to the house which is very well used in the screenplay. It is part of the storytelling. The wide rooms, the long stairs, the open kitchen, the towering presence of this mansion. There's a scale to it. And when you place a lone person adjacent to it, it gives you a feeling of loneliness. There's quite a contrast on how polished everything looks in this house to the supernatural activities which are very crude in nature. And it also tells you that money cannot save you from a ghost. Talk about the sound design, which again is so important to give you that spooky feeling, to hold that tension. Something's gonna go wrong, something's gonna go wrong. And nothing really goes wrong, but the sound gets you. In my recent video, I talk about the L&J cuts, where the audio from the next scene comes before that scene and vice versa. And they use that in this film a lot. And again, there's nothing horrifying, but because of the sound, they get to you. Like in the current scene, everything is fine, but we hear an audio which is very loud, which is very sudden. And that makes your brain think that something's gonna happen. And we cut to the next scene and there's nothing. That sound was coming from something ordinary. There's nothing horrifying coming. And I noticed this at so many points in the film. And the moment you get used to it, then they'll drop that jump scare. Now talking about the story, which I think usually horror films don't have much, and that's similar here. It's very simple, very straightforward, and you understand it totally. There are a lot of cool choices the director has made with the plot and the characters, which again I cannot talk about here because we'll get into spoilers, but there are a lot of fascinating elements, which are very refreshing. At no point in the film anything feels very typical, the usual complaints we have from horror films. Now something I find difficult with this film is judging the horror, because as I said, I'm not too much into this genre, so I don't have references of what is good horror, what is bad horror, how much horror is enough. Because after the show I talked to someone and they said that they thought the horror was not too much, very limited, so maybe the expectation was a little high. Even I heard great praises about the film and how horrifying it is, and compared to that hype, maybe the film didn't match that. There are some really good moments again which are very well executed. The way they construct a scene, the way they build it up, and the most important is holding the tension for that long duration, and for that they take their time to make it happen. There are no horror moments one after the other back to back, and that's why even for a film which is under 2 hours, the film may feel slow, but the trade-off is that the film feels more organic. The film has the spooky moments, it has some gory moments, there are some twists and turns, but what I'm wondering is that it didn't impact me the way I thought it would. It is definitely creepy, the moment I start thinking about the plot and what all happened, suddenly it gives me chills. And also for a human brain, when there's something which is very unknown, it is very scary scary to you. But the moment you get explanation and understanding of it, that fear starts to fade away. And that's what happens with this film, because by the end you get the answers. You understand what's going on. Things become known to you. Now my only reference to horrors, that too from Malayalam cinema, is the last two films of the director, Bhutakalam and Brahmayugam. And if I compare this film to them, I think those films really had a big major theme to them. Apart from being horror films, they were saying something much more bigger. And it's not that Diés Iraé is anything less than them, but I feel those films have more than Diés Iraé. I hope that makes sense. Bhutakalam was about the horrors of grief and tragedy, something which reminded me of the film Hereditary. And Brahmayugam, with all that stylistic choices, being a period film, getting those mythic and fantasy elements to it, and the way it portrays the cycle of oppression, that kind of elevated that film. Whereas with Diés Iraé, I couldn't find a particular theme that the film is talking about. In the second half, it kind of becomes an investigative thriller. At the beginning of the film, I was thinking maybe they'll bring the class angle into it, and you can draw out some elements for it, but overall it would not be that convincing that that is the theme of the film. Now, it's not mandatory to have a theme, but that's what I'm saying. It's not that Diés Iraé didn't have much, but the other two films had more than it. But I can definitely say the whole cast and crew delivered. And talking about Pranav Mohanlal, he kind of carries the film, especially in the sequences of getting, scared. I think it's a very difficult performance because there's a very fine line. It can become very cringy, not likable, and you have to just crack that pitch. How much scared can I get? What is acceptable, what is not? And there's a lot of physical performance also, getting tormented, which we have seen in the trailer. And again, there's a choice with this character, which again I can talk about here, but the way he carries that character is really well done. Now, personally, I've never been a fan of the horror genre. From my childhood, I used to get scared, I can say it openly. And maybe because of that, over the years, I've created a rational thinking, which makes it difficult to watch horror films. Now, I know the question would be that should affect every film that is fictional, superhero films, fantasy films. Why would I like that? I feel it's easier to watch those films because it's all make-believe. It's all made up. It's their own world, their own rules. And thus, they're easy to convince you more. But with horror, especially films like these, they're actually going for that realistic approach. They want the audience to think this is all real. And maybe that makes you expect what is unfolding in front of you to be more realistic and grounded. That every action that happens should also feel realistic. And when it doesn't happen, you have a lot of questions. Why this? Why that? And maybe some of them are the tropes of the genre, which again, I don't watch so many films of the genre, so I cannot really comment. But I have a lot of questions about the plot, like why this happened, why the character did this, but then how come that happened? I have so many questions. Again, I can only talk about in spoilers. And this film does something in the end which I was actually expecting that they would do, and because it happened, it felt very adulterated, because it's nowadays trending, so they did it. Again, something I can only talk about in the spoilers. I feel the whole review I just said I'll talk about in spoilers, so I think we need to do that video. But now with 3 films out from Rahul Sadasivan, I would rank them Bhutakalam, Brahmayugam, and then Diés Iraé. And I've given you my reasons for that. But what is your ranking? Let me know in the comments. We will be doing a spoiler discussion. If you haven't seen my review for Bhutakalam and Brahmayugam, check it out here. And I will see you next time. Get spooky.